Good afternoon, everybody. I would like to welcome you to this webinar dedicated to the understanding and the choosing of a microbial-based product in agriculture. So whether it's for disease or pest control matters, plant health and nutrition, it's crucial to understand the key features and the mechanisms of these products in order to achieve the most efficient agronomic purpose. My name is Benoît Delfour, and I am a Field Solutions Manager for the company LALEXPERT. And with my colleague Andrew Goff, our senior agronomist within the Field Solutions team, we have prepared this talk to discuss this growing topic in the agricultural sector. So in this session, I will briefly present the company LALEXPERT, but then I will quickly leave the floor to Andrew, and he will present the key features of a microbial-based product that will impact its interest to serve an agronomic purpose. But most of all, he will outline the main points for consideration when choosing such a product. I will then conclude with the information that you should have access to when using such a product. So I encourage you to ask your questions throughout the webinar, because our goal is to share knowledge and encourage meaningful exchanges. Your cameras and your microphones, they are automatically muted, but you can ask your questions in the dedicated section, which is on the upper part of the Teams application on your screen. So you have here on the slide all the procedures to follow if you want to ask a question. And of course, we will take some time at the end of the session to answer these questions within a dedicated slot. The session should be lasting between 25 and 30 minutes. And for your information, this session will be recorded, and we will send you the recording at the end of the presentation. So, as mentioned previously, this webinar is organized by the company LALEXPERT, and we are a Canadian company specializing in the production and the distribution of microorganisms. We are part of a group, the LALEXPERT Group, that aims to deliver to the agri-food industry numerous microbe-based solutions. But for the agricultural world, within the LALEXPERT business unit, we focus our efforts on the supply of biosolutions, which are mainly biopesticides, biostimulants, and they are formulated from microorganisms. These microbes that we produce, they are fungi, bacteria, yeast, but also their derivatives. So I'd like to thank you for being here, and I wish you an enriching session. Andrew, you now have the floor.
Thank you, Benoît. Good afternoon, everybody. As Benoît said, we're delighted to have you here today, and hopefully we will impart some useful information to all of you. I thought to start with, we would put things in context where our world is at the moment with regard to the agro and land-based industries. We have a situation in the world at present where the population is the highest it's ever been in the history of this earth, of human beings on the planet. And this situation is set to change drastically within a very short time frame. So within the next 25 years, the number could or should be rising from 8.2 billion at the moment to 9.7 billion by 2050. And as a backdrop to this, the production of food to feed this population, which is a huge challenge, is also changing, with food production systems changing to pesticide-free, increased organic farming production methods, and the change to regenerative farming methods. In this shift of agricultural practices, diversity and sustainability are key. We have a situation where man-made fertilizer and agrochemical usage is dropping, genetic selection is altering, where selection for disease resistance and ability to resist insects and other disorders is becoming a huge priority, and farming practices are modifying with regard to rotations, which are widening, the use of cover crops, the increased use of organic matter, and the focus on soil health, with soil tillage also altering, movement away from ploughing and minimizing the number of systems that are used to mechanically work the soil. And finally, the very large subject of increased inputs in the sense of microbiologicals and macrobiologicals, which are encompassed as biologicals. As Benoît mentioned, the focus of LALEXPERT is microbiological products. And there are many challenges because of the situation that's coming about. With the flood of products coming onto the market, it's becoming very important to be able to interpret the information that's available, because these organism-based products are varying in type, they're varying in the way they're used, the content of them, the effectiveness of them, and various other elements, for example, how to prepare them. So it's been very important to know how to navigate the offers that are coming forward and to make informed decisions from this information, knowing what is needed in the sense of information and how to obtain it is very important. The main objectives with regard to a microbiological product are encompassed hopefully in this slide. In LALEXPERT Plant Care, since we started, we've always held strongly to the belief, and we have practiced putting as much information as we can onto a product label. And we insist that this is the way forward to provide this type of information to users regarding each of our products. Shown clearly on the label must be the function of the product. Here we have a very popular product of ours, one of our best sellers, Pre-Stop WP, which has the function of being a biofungicide. Next, the targets of this product. What exactly does it work on? And in this case, it's very specific about certain diseases that it can have effect on, assisting with control. Then must be mentioned the crops. Where can these targets be controlled? Which types of crops? And very broad description of the crops is given with regard to this product. Next is the registration. Registration is a demonstration of commitment by the manufacturer, because demonstrated efficacy through research-based work matches then the claims to what the product can actually do. And finally mentioned is the manufacturer, which we believe is a very important point, the next point to highlight. Manufacturers should be stated on the label, and it's important to realize that globally there are very few players that have the size, the financial wherewithal to create products that are efficient, consistent, and produced on large scale, cost effectively. To take the situation shown on the left hand side there, where an organism has been isolated and purified, and put it through an industrial process that produces at the other end a product that is viable, that has good storability and therefore a good shelf life, has a formulation which is easy to use and convenient, thereby bringing about better ability to be applied, and also pure, meaning lack of contaminants, is a massive challenge. And the manufacturer needs to be shown, and it needs to be understood that there's a huge amount of human know-how that goes into the process, as well as the fixtures and fittings. Next to be shown on product information in the label is the active ingredient, the active substance. All living organisms are characterized through a hierarchical system spanning from domain to strain. And the last 3 points of the hierarchy system are very important: the genus, the species, and the strain. Knowing the genus only of a microorganism, that it's a bacillus, is not enough. And even knowing the species of that bacillus is not enough. Bacillus aeruginosa, Bacillus subtilis, it's not enough. Knowing the specific strain is very important. Bacillus valaisensis, NCIB 30322, is very specific. And the efficacy of the microorganism, and also the absence of toxicity from this organism, is very crucial with regard to the strain. The specifics of functionality are connected to the strain. So we insist on looking at the strain specifically, because different strains can be quite different in their abilities, growth, metabolite production, and then their influence. So effectiveness and suitability are massively influenced by this. Therefore, the point mentioned at the bottom, genus, species, and strain must appear on a label. What form are the microorganisms in? Because microorganisms can adopt different forms, some of which enable them to exploit an environment, and some of them that enable them to resist a wide variety of stresses. This is a very important detail to note. Bacteria can have vegetative cells, their growing form, or spores. Fungi, similarly, the vegetative form in the sense of individual hyphae, collectively known as mycelia, and their spores, conidia, the result of sexual reproduction. And finally mentioned mycorrhiza, where conidia or spores, as against propagules, which are vegetative forms growing in a vegetable media, is another format. With current technologies, we're able to produce the resting forms of the microbes very efficiently, and these will germinate under favorable conditions and have further flexibility and ability to withstand downstream processes such as packaging, storage, mixing, and application. So the form should be provided. Here you can see with this product, the mycorrhiza product, the form of spores is shown to differentiate it from other mycorrhiza products that are propagule orientated. Counting is the next thing that's important to have clearly shown. And generally, microorganisms are counted as CFUs per gram or per milliliter of product. CFUs is an international standard, meaning colony forming units. And these are the number of microbial cells, either bacteria or fungi, that are able to multiply and form a colony. Just to give an example, a number that looks quite large of 10 to the power of 6 CFUs per gram, or 1 million, in a bacterial product is considered to be a contaminant and not actually a useful active substance. Here you can show another popular product of LALEXPERT plant cares, where not only genus, species, and strain are shown, but the CFU count at 2 times 10 to the 10 to 20 billion colony forming units per milliliter is shown. What about multi-strain products? In LALEXPERT plant care, our products are predominantly monostrain products, meaning there's one type of organism in there, except in some cases with rhizobial products where we might have two for specific purposes. Multi-strain products contain varying numbers of unspecified organisms, and stability and reliability of these products is questionable. Formulation and packaging. Products can be in a dry formulation, powders or granules, and there are 2 challenges with regard to producing these. First, the challenge of drying them after they've been propagated, and secondly, keeping them dry, minimizing contact with oxygen or moisture. As opposed to liquid formulations, where the challenge is stability, because mixing with water, for example, wakes up resting spores, and then they grow and can't find food, so their numbers start to decrease drastically. Products can exist in various forms with the same organism, so we can have it in a powder form through to a liquid form, and some of our later innovations on products have moved in this direction. Shown in the liquids here, for example, is the first one, LALEXPERT. It's a rhizobia with a support substance in the bladder to keep the organisms alive. Or an oil dispersion product, a little to the right, LALGard M52OD, which gives massive stability to the organism contained and gives greater flexibility to the end user. We also have fluid-based formats, which are pastes, and the one shown bottom right is actually the first product in our herbicide range within LALEXPERT. Just to drive home this point on formulation a little further and show you a massive difference made on a product, the oil dispersion format of Lalexpert 52OD, as opposed to the water version of the same product, is 112 times more efficient. So just to explain, on the left-hand side, the LD50, the lethal dose 50, is how many spores it takes to kill an insect, and 99% better results achieved with an oil-based product than with a water-based product. Further benefits are that the oil gives protection against desiccation and ultraviolet light, and assists with prolonging persistence against rain or after rain and after irrigation. The final point to mention, and should be clearly shown on the label, is the shelf life and the storage conditions needed for the product. Because microorganisms are living, they have ideal conditions that they prefer to live in, and they can be sensitive to environmental situations that alter in terms of temperature, humidity, pressure, and light. Particularly when they're applied, ultraviolet light can have a huge effect. But if the conditions for storage are respected, then shelf life can be guaranteed, and we're willing to show this, as shown on this label example here, 24 months on a liquid bacillus product, if the conditions for storage are respected. So another very important detail to have with regard to the products that you look at and use.
Thank you, Andrew. So we've seen that there's in fact very important information that you can find on the label when you choose a microbial-based product. But that's not the only information that you should be provided with, especially if you're a farmer or an advisor. It's very important that you access to the recommendation and the information for the best use of the product. And this can be accessible through the distribution network or through your LALEXPERT local representative. And here on this slide, you have an example as shown. So you have on the left-hand side, stemming from a label, or the dose rate, the number of application, the treatment interval, but also the restrictions. But depending on the country, this information, they can be determined by regulatory purposes. So it's important to have, like it is shown on the right-hand side, specific information regarding dosage, application timing, recommended water volume, etc. All the tips that will help you to be more specific to a target or to a crop. So this recommendation, they should be accessible through your LALEXPERT Plant Care distribution channel, and they will ensure the best agronomic response to your objective, while of course respecting the registration limitation or restrictions to the use of the product. Yep, thank you, Andrew. Another key aspect that goes beyond the label information when you use a microbial-based solution is compatibility. The objective is to ensure that when you're using a living organism, that it will perform as expected, even when it's introduced in a complex agronomic system. So it's very important to check that, for example, a product that is applied within a crop protection program, that he will not be affected or negatively impacted by the use of another product, for example, a chemical fungicide. So here it's also very important that you have access to extensive compatibility information through, again, your distribution network or your local representative. And within our team, we have developed a methodology to ensure that when a product is tank mixed for 6 hours with another product on the market, that our formulated microbe remains viable and is still capable to perform as expected. And we are now able to provide with an extensive table mentioning the product tested and the test parameters, like it's shown on the left-hand side of your screen. And in addition, there's also very important information that you should have access to is the expected agronomic outcome when you use such microbial solution. So efficacy for crop protection products, crop response to the specific claims for biostimulants, etc., etc. And this information can be accessible through relevant trial information that should show objective and proven efficacy. In a word, all you need to know is to be advised about the outcome of the use of the product and its agronomic benefits with proven and reliable data. Thanks, Andrew. Another aspect that we believe is crucial to the best use of the product is the technical support that you are able to be provided with. And this is why I chose to show you on this slide, on which you can see all the L'Allemand Plant Care commercial team in Europe. And within our EMEA team, as you can see, we are present in most of the European countries. And we're also increasing our presence in Africa. So you are, of course, free to contact the relevant L'Allemand Plant Care colleague. The objective is to ensure that you are supported with the best advice to use our solution. Thank you, Andrew. And before we conclude our webinar and enter the Q&A section, if you need to go deeper on a topic, you can access some different channels which contains useful information, useful material. On the left-hand side, you have a link to our Knowledge Center, and on the right-hand side to our YouTube channel through the links on your screen. And on these channels, you will be able to find some useful information, some technical articles, some nice videos regarding the mode of action of our specific strains, the good practices regarding key pests, regarding key disease, etc., etc. And also, you will have both our email addresses if you need to contact us and discuss specific topics with us. So, I'd like to thank you very much for your attention, and we can now enter the Q&A section. So, Andrew, we should have time for 3 or 4 questions. The first one that had been asked is regarding the strain identification. So the question is, Andrew, what is the difference between SPP and SP that we find both on the market? So this is linked, I think, to the microbe characterization on some labels, where you can find some strains or at least some microbes that are not strain identified. Andrew?
Yes, no problem. Yes, and quite commonly used on the multi-strain product offerings out there, what we would refer to as consortium products. So these are abbreviations that are used in microbiology and taxonomy. SP is singular and SPP is plural. And these stand for species, plural or singular. In the SP version, it's a singular organism that's unspecified. It's an unspecified species within the genus. So Trichoderma SP would be an unspecified Trichoderma, whereas SPP is plural species, again used for referring to unspecified species within a genus. So Bacillus SPP would be a collection of unspecified bacilli.
And Andrew, what would be the impact of using a SP or SPP product in the field on a crop?
Well, the exact species is not identified. So not only the species are not identified, but the strain is not identified. So the very specific functionality of that organism and therefore its agronomic usefulness is not provided. And so it's difficult to know what the outcomes might be and the agronomic usefulness of the organism.
Okay, thanks, Andy. The next questions we have in the Q&A section is, why does shelf life varies between products?
Right, well, pretty much all of that was covered in the subject titles within this presentation. So it varies because of microbial strain, formulation, the composition of the product, what's in there, what nutrients, what preservatives. These can impact the longevity of the microbe. And if the right ones are in there, then the optimal conditions are provided. The storage conditions, the temperature, humidity, light, exposure, these affect shelf life, and providing what the organism needs in this regard can increase or reduce shelf life accordingly. The packaging, whether the packaging keeps out moisture, keeps out air, allows some air in, because some organisms do need to be able to get air. Production methods, how well the product is produced. It's not enough to just produce good quantities of bacillus. They need to be produced with the right conditions to be fit. Just because they're there, if they're not fit, is an issue. And then contamination control, contamination in the process of manufacture and in storage.
Well, thanks, Andrew. And actually, that's the next question. It's regarding contaminants. The question is, how can we guarantee the absence of contaminant in our products?
Well, in our case, we test them, and we have threshold levels that we cannot exceed. And if we exceed them, the whole production batch is destroyed. It's not blended with another batch where they aren't there to make the numbers go down. If we exceed thresholds, we don't use them. But it's about testing.
Yeah, Andrew, and in fact, we have quality control measures at different steps of the fermentation processes and the downstream process too. So we ensure that we have contaminant-free products all along the production process. The next question, we might have the time for one or two more questions. So the question is, Andrew, when using a microbial product, can the time of day you apply the product impact the product's efficacy?
Yes, most certainly. So because of the sensitivity of microorganisms to the points mentioned, temperature, humidity, and UV light, applying the products either at the end of the day where it's going to cool down normally and humidity levels stabilize and ultraviolet light is not present, so the organism has time to establish. So for example, the pre-stop product we showed, we know that very soon after being applied, it attaches to the leaf and it starts to grow. The time of night available for it to do this is very advantageous. If it cannot be the end of the day, certainly the early part of the day before, so the start of the day from daybreak, can be advantageous. The dew on leaves can supply the relevant humidity and the lack of UV light until the organism establishes itself.
Thanks, Andrew. The next question is regarding the monitoring of microbes and their efficacy. So the question is, Andrew, a question often asked is, can you find the microorganisms back after applying, and how to check if it works correctly? Is there a method available for this for the product LALEXPERT K61WP? So I can answer this question, Andrew. In fact, yes, it's possible to monitor and to try to quantify the microbes on the leaf surface or in the soil after applying. So we have different methodologies that you can implement. They're usually done at the lab. So you have to sample some leaves, sample some roots, sample some soil, and then you can quantify using some specific methodology the CFU per surface of leaf or CFU per grams of soil, etc., and check the presence and the quantity of the microbes. And then the next part of the question is how to check if it works correctly. Well, I want to answer like any other crop protection or biostimulant products. If you don't have any untreated control, it's difficult to make this assessment. But what I've said earlier is that the products, and like Andrew said, the products that we put in the market, they are all subject to efficacy data dossier, technical dossier. So we have to prove their efficacy in order to have them on the market, sold on the market. So lastly, to answer the K61 aspect, K61WP, so the soil-borne disease management product, yes, we are able to monitor this product in the soil, so the streptomyces we are using in it with sampling and quantification. So I see the time is now 2 p.m. So we have to To say this webinar is now finished. So as promised, you will receive a link to the recording, but also a survey to this webinar. And I greatly encourage you to answer it, as your feedbacks, they will help us to improve the content and the format of our future sessions. So I wish you goodbye, everybody.